All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have a really special program tonight, so we're very proud to have our guest, the Garzas, here, and we'll be diving into the content in a few minutes. But first, I want to just give you guys an overview and an introduction to Quest as a whole. Again, here, we do sponsor a lot in the way of not only IRA custodian administration, but also have a strong focus on education and live events like what we're doing tonight, and also robust networking like we're doing tonight. So, who is Quest? Well, we are the largest self directed IRA custodian in the state of Texas and one of the largest in the country. We do have at this point 20,000 active investors in the nation. So we have a nationwide reach. Right now, we have a total of 2 billion in assets under our account administration, over 100 employees that are split between offices in Houston, Austin, and Dallas, and many of whom are credentialed specialists in the area of IRAs. They've achieved their certified IRA specialist designation, which is a special designation that is offered and sponsored by the American Banking Association. So it's a lot of education and a lot of effort that our people will go through to obtain that designation. And right now, interestingly, many of our clients are ready to make deals. We have right now somewhere in the neighborhood of $400 million that our clients are waiting to invest. So if you're looking for clients to make deals, this is the right place to be, because this networking will help you meet them. And again, they're looking to deploy their cash. Now, just as a preface as well, I do want to emphasize the content that I'm delivering this evening is purely for educational purposes only. Any kind of transaction that you enter, before you do so, you are going to want to do your due diligence. So you may need to contact your financial advisor, your tax advisor, or legal advisor in order, to make sure that the deals are suitable to your risk tolerance and your investment objectives overall. Now, what is it we do? Self-directed IRAs. So, in a manner of speaking, every IRA is really self-directed. Self-directed is really just a marketing term that we use, but an IRA is an IRA is an IRA. And again, if you think of it, because of the fact that you personally get to choose what you invest in any IRA, you could say they're all self-directed. Now, the distinction and why we draw the distinction is because with the self-directed IRA, especially through Quest, you truly get to pick the asset that you are investing in. So through the self-directed IRA, the big difference is you're dealing in private assets as opposed to working with a company, say like a Fidelity or a Vanguard or a Schwab. You go there and you buy their products, and everybody can go there and buy their products. But with regard to the self-directed IRA, it may be an opportunity only you have or something that you have personally found. So that is the real difference and the distinction. And there are a multitude of benefits that you can also get by using the self-directed IRA. First and foremost, I would say diversification. Because like I was saying, before with places like Fidelity and Vanguard, it doesn't seem to matter where you go, you're going to end up primarily with the same things. The reason is, again, there are fewer stocks than there are mutual funds and ETFs. And very easily, you can find yourself more concentrated than diversified. So it's very easy that, you're however diversified you think you are, you're not that diversified. But through the self-directed IRA, you have the opportunity to invest in something that is truly unique, something like a piece of real estate that truly will not correlate to what the stock market is doing. It's going to have its own separate variables that will determine its value and give you truer overall diversification. The next benefit, of course, is the tax savings. These accounts primarily are always tax deferred, tax-free growth in some cases, tax deferral or tax deductibility in many cases. So you have a myriad of opportunities to grow your money without the IRS touching it year after year. And again, depending on the type of account, would depend on what the tax treatment is come retirement, which could be none. There could conceivably be a number of ways in which there is no tax consequence for distributions that you take from the various types of accounts. I like to think too that self-directed IRAs are unique in the sense that they give you a little bit of an opportunity for what I would refer to as social investing. Think about it for a second. You're buying that property in the neighborhood that's completely run down, the eyesore. You're the one who's going in and making that something better. But what are you doing as well? Let's not forget, you are sourcing out the labor locally. You are, in all likelihood, buying the materials locally. So not only are you improving an area, you are also improving the economy of that area. And the end result is that there will be a better property and consequently a better area. I like to think of it as a way that you can do well for the overall community and do well for yourself. Sounds ideal. The last real virtue, I think, of the self-directed is, as I've been kind of building up to, you're investing in the thing you know best. You're not turning your money over to a fund manager who then takes control and invests in whatever he or she thinks is the best option at that time. You are the person who is selecting the investment. You are the one who has done the due diligence. You've done the research. Consequently, potentially, you are going to be a lot less surprised by the outcome because of the due diligence that you have done. So it gives you that advantage as well in terms of you really knowing what you're putting your money in. Now, the types of IRAs that are available, they are wide. They range from the personal types of accounts. This would be the traditional. And the traditional is also commonly referred to as the rollover. That's often where any kinds of employer plans will end up when you are taking the distributions. And then, of course, there's our friend the Roth, one of the greatest things ever, because the Roth is the one that gives you the potential for tax-free income in retirement. I want to let that sink in. Tax-free income for retirement. All right. Then we have our employer plans. And again, the employer plans, they come in a couple of different varieties. It's really a question of which one suits you best for your needs. And again, we could do a whole presentation on employer plans. If you're interested in these, one of the virtues is that they do let you put in significantly more than the personal accounts. And again, can be very valuable tools to your business. So if you do want to know more about these, please reach out to us here and we can discuss which one may be the best for you. And finally, there are our specialty plans. Technically speaking, these are not IRAs, but they are still tax-deferred accounts, and in both cases offer the ability for tax-free distributions. First, we have the health savings account, which anything that you put in there is deductible, deferred, and can come out tax-free as long as it goes to what's called a qualified education expense. And a qualified medical expense. And a qualified medical expense has a very broad definition. It's things you would expect, like a doctor's appointment or an eye exam or something along those lines. But it can be something as well as a seeing eye dog, if that should be a need. So there's a complete government document that will cover all the things that fall under that, that definition. And again, it's pretty vast and pretty wide. Then the last is the Coverdale Education Savings Account. Now, this is the one that will let you take money out tax-free for qualified education expenses. And again, that too has a very broad definition. First of all, what's really interesting about the ESA is that it's not oriented necessarily toward college. It can be used really when the beneficiary is about any age. But among the other things, as books and tuition and fees and things like that, that it can be used for, it can be used for some things that might seem a little more obscure, like school uniforms. Even in this day and age with the COVID restrictions, they were allowing things like Wi-Fi to be paid for. So again, a lot of accounts, a lot of advantages, can cover just about any goal that you may have. Now, in terms of the options of what you have with the self-directed, it ranges from real estate, that being a hard asset, that being a piece of property, a flip, to entities, which could be multifamily syndications, LLCs. And finally, one of the big things that our clients do is lending through promissory notes. They can be secured, unsecured. I've heard some very interesting descriptions of collateral that have been used from time to time. Now, in terms of the steps, it's a pretty straightforward procedure. If you are looking to do a self-directed IRA through Quest, it basically starts with opening the account. Then we fund your account. Then you find what you want to invest in. Then it's a matter of just directing us as to how you wish to invest the funds. In our case, you will work with a client specialist who will guide you through that transaction on a one-to-one basis. And then finally, the investment gets funded. So pretty simple process. And one thing, again, unique to Quest Trust Company is we will execute your transactions in 24 to 48 hours. Fastest in the business. Now, let me just talk a little bit about some of the things that we have that are in place. First of all, it always pays to refer somebody here to Quest. We have an ongoing referral program. If you refer a client to us and they open an account, that will get the new client $25 off their account opening fee, normally $100, and a $25 credit to you as the person who referred. And I've seen some clients of mine who have really been racking that up. I've had 8, 10 referrals. So the referrer is really getting a benefit there. In addition to that, we have our ongoing classes, Saturdays around noon our time here in Texas, the self-directed IRA Saturday. We also have weekly classes. Our virtual happy hour, which was very popular, has been continuing. And anything that you see here, you can find on our archives if you can't attend it at the initial date or time through our YouTube channel or our Facebook page. Now, a couple of events we have coming up. This one is going to be kind of unique. This is what we call our Major League Investing. So we have 4 investment experts who are going to basically compete with each other. And you guys get to be the umpires. You get to be the judges in terms of what happens here. So they're going to present some of their best deals that they've done. And you're going to get a chance to vote and see who ends up being really the all-star, so to speak. So it's going to be one of our lunch and learns. It's coming up in March. We're really looking forward to it. Now, we're also really trying to make an effort now to get to our friends in San Antonio. So we will be starting to go back there again. We have a lunch and learn that's scheduled there for mid to late March. It will feature our president, Nathan Long, as well as Eddie Speed. Looking forward to that. And then the 3rd annual Quest Expo, which will be coming up in September. This is going to be a weekend. It's going to have a number of different educational keynote presentations and experts from across the real estate field. It will also have a number of vendors, which will give you the unique opportunity to start building out your team in terms of who is going to help you succeed ultimately in all your potential investing. Now, we are at a point too where we are still offering early bird pricing. So if you're interested, just reach out and let us know. Finally, if you are looking to set up a consultation, if you do want to learn more, please scan the QR code that will access our calendar. You can set up a time that's convenient for you. You can always use our chat box too. Just coincidentally, Mondays, you might find me in the chat box. Or just go the old-fashioned way. Call us up or shoot us an email. Any way you do it, we're here to help you, and we look forward to having a deeper conversation with you guys about your self-directed IRA investing needs. All right, so now the folks of the hour. It's my pleasure to introduce Jacob and Arlene Garza. Jacob is very well known and very well respected. He's the co-founder of REAP Equity, and he focuses a great deal on the overall development and seeing over the growth of REAP Equity. So he is the one who's out there finding the deals. He comes from a unique background, more of a tech background. And I've heard of this software that he used, which was largely for property management and was very well regarded and well used and well received. Now, Arlene is also part of REAP Equity. Arlene is kind of the real driver in the company. And she comes from a background in financial services. She's been in a variety of different positions, ultimately become a senior vice president in the field. She also has been a consultant where she has worked with just about any industry you can think of: medical, financial, food services, you name it. So without any further ado, because I think I've been here maybe a little too long, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jacob. All right. Thank you very much.
Let's see if this is on. Testing. Okay. I'll just use the mic. Is your microphone working, Arlene? Yeah, I did that already, so it's green button. Oh, there it goes. Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
That's hear me okay? Is this better?
See, if you pull it up a little higher.
All right.
There you go. Okay.
All right, I'll just use the mic, so I won't worry about that. So thank you, Steve, for that wonderful presentation, and he's exactly right. You guys know who use Quest. It's extremely easy to use. They make it super simple, and they're very quick. And as a sponsor, it's very good to work with a company that also moves the money quickly and gets the deal funded. So it's very good to have Quest on our side. And I think about 600 plus investors we've got is easily 150 Quest customers we have. So, and what Steve says about the real estate business is correct. The social part, the social investing is a very good it's a very good business. We call it the feel good business because we do transform the lives of many, many, many people, and they are living in our homes, and we take that very seriously. We're going to take a couple of screens to show you how our employees are engaged, and that we feel like they come to work with a real purpose to manage our properties. And Arlene handles with most of our team the buy side, and we certainly buy right. But I can tell you today, if you can't manage it right, you're just not going to meet your projections on your investment. So, Arlene.
Well, good to be with you. Can you hear me now? Okay, perfect. I speak loud anyway. There we go. I hit it. Maybe I just won't move. Anyway, I'd like to introduce Rebecca, trainer that's with us tonight. She is a big part of our team. She's our investor relations manager. So some of you guys that are in the room that invest with us today deal a lot with Rebecca, and wanted to introduce her before we get going because she's the person that works with the folks at Quest. And I would say it even if they weren't in the room, that they are really our best partner in terms of from the IRA standpoint. As Steve said, 24 to 48 hours, they're helping our investors and their clients mutually get their investments going so that their money can make money. So we appreciate Quest quite a bit, and thank you for having us here tonight. So, you know, as Jacob said, you buy it well, and that's a huge, huge part of it. But managing it well is also a key. So we're going to share with you tonight how we approach real estate investing and multifamily investing in particular, and how we've personally also used it to grow and preserve our wealth. So let's see. Oh, other way. There we go.
Okay, Steve's already done an introduction for us, so I'm not going to spend
Get out.
any time on this other than we started this business 10 years ago. And when I sold my last software company in 2007, that was out of Richardson, we moved to San Antonio. And in 2012, I mentioned Arlene, hey, let's buy a property. I think I wanted to get into property management. I want
And I
to
went,
invest the dollar.
eek, because I'm a conservative banker, right? So I had been helping our clients, but they were, investing in CDs at the time. They paid pretty well. Way back in the 90s, they paid well, but not so much today. So I said, hold on a minute. I really want to understand how this multifamily investing works.
So we bought a 24 unit and we spent some time with the National Apartment Association and really getting involved with the nuts and bolts of how these properties work. I did a lot of the maintenance and the CapEx and the property. I did the leasing on it. So we liked it. And 6 months later, we bought a 28 unit. And about 8 months later, we bought an 88 unit and then 147 unit. So we realized at that point, we really liked this business. And then we started syndicating. We started scaling the business up from there. But we did spend a lot of time with that. So this is our 10-year growth that we've been here. So as you can see, that was what we started in 2012. And that's some pretty good growth. But if you look at throughout the years, it's been some very steady growth. The software business that I had they were all high growth companies, and you can really get out of your skis pretty quick if you grow too fast. And we do manage our own properties. So we have a full management company that handles all the day-to-day management. So I feel real comfortable with this growth, and we did some pretty good growth in 2021. So we feel like we're pretty good to continue our responsible growth, we like to call it. So we have currently, let's see, about 3,500 units we purchased to date. We've brought in about $95 million worth of equity. Some of that is our money. We put money, our cash, in every one of our deals. Totals to about $400 million in transactions that we bought, and we've improved the properties to a tune of $11.5 million. So that's our recent commercial building that we just bought. We're on the 4th floor, our equity group, and our management team is on the 2nd floor, and we lease the rest.
So being in real estate, when we ran out of space where we were leasing, we said, what's the right way to do this? Let's have somebody else pay for our mortgage, just like on the multifamily side. So we bought the commercial building, as Jacob said, and moved into it a few months ago. And the good thing is it was already 85% occupied. We like to buy stabilized property. So there was enough room for us to move in, yet it was going to be a cash flowing venture from the beginning.
So here is REAP's basically organization. If you look at the left side, that's where Arlene handles all of our transactions. She sources all the deals, has a relationship with the brokers. That's her team underneath there. She doesn't do all the sourcing. When we get a deal under contract, it moves to our transactions coordinator because there's a lot of moving parts to get a deal under contract, the loan app, and to get it closed. So she handles all of that. On the other side, the right side, is where the management is. I'm going to call it a dotted line I've got to the rest of the group, and a solid line to Stacy. Stacy Hampton's been with us over 2 years now. She's the president of our management company. She does an outstanding job. She came from a company here, actually, out of Austin with 14,000 units. I think they're 20,000 units now. So, and below there, you see all the properties that they manage. So here you see the director in the middle, director of marketing, development director, and investor relations. They all report up to me. But we have a really, really good group. We have a solid culture. Our team, they know how to execute. They constantly invest in themselves on a business level. So we're pretty happy with them.
So we have about 100 team members. A lot of them are on site working at the properties. And then we've got a corporate team. And for us, it has been an investment in people, in human capital, because this, as we grew, we knew what we needed to add to the team. So we added it pretty much in advance of when we would need it. As Jacob said, Stacy has managed over 14,000 units. But when we hired her specifically with the goal of growing to that point where she could handle anything that we put in front of her. So that's just an example of how we've approached kind of growing our business. Okay, so this, people will always ask, and I'm sorry, it looks like the top part is cut off. We have taken 8 properties full cycle, which just means that we bought them, managed them, and sold them. And so that is what in the industry is called our track record, right? By being able to demonstrate what we've been able to do. So of the 8 properties, the average equity multiple just means the return that people have been able to grow their money at is between 1.8 and 2 times. So as an example here, the IRR has been between 16 and 19%. Each property is different. So those numbers, that's why we have a range. Some have been on the high side, some have been on the 16% side. But let's look at the example of an investor return. So had you invested in one of these 8 properties, on average, if you'd invested $100,000, at the end of the time, which has been 2 to 3 years, some a little longer, your return would have been $180,000. So you would get your $100,000 back, plus you would have grown your money. And that's why we like it. That's why we invest our own money. And in fact, I have an IRA that I invest through, and it's real estate. Our broker out of Dallas, who I moved my IRA to when I left the bank, now calls me and says, I know I can't offer you the kind of returns that you make through real estate. I can only offer you diversification. So over time, I've moved the money out of the traditional investments and into IRA because I know how it works, and I've seen the money grow. So it's been a very good thing for us. So let's talk a little bit about why we love multifamily. It's really a great way to diversify your portfolio, and it's a good hedge against inflation. And people always ask, well, what will happen to multifamily if we have increasing inflation, which we know will happen? Well, what happens in inflation? Prices rise, right? That's what inflation is. Well, guess what? If prices rise, so do rents. That is one of those things that people pay for. So as rents rise, so do the value of properties, because multifamily properties are strictly valued on the income they generate. So if rents go up, income goes up, the value of those properties goes up, and so does the investment in that asset. So we love that. It increases in investment value through both natural and forced appreciation. What is natural? It will naturally, over time, improve in value as rents go up. Forced appreciation is when we go in and we deploy a rehab plan and a business plan, and that helps the rents go up, and therefore the value of the property goes up. So the appreciation, and we'll show you some examples, but 2 properties that we bought together after a 2.5-year point of holding them, when we refinanced, we returned investors' money, about 45% or so of their money. But those 2 properties had increased $12 million in that a little over 2-year period. So where would you find that in another investment? It's something that we always look at. Capital preservation, these are tangible assets. It's not a stock or a bond where there's somebody in New York determining the value of your money or the value of that stock, or did GDP go up, or what happened that impacted the value of your stock. Well, in this case, it is that building. It is that piece of land that building sits on, and it's how you run it that increases the value. Passive income with quarterly cash flow. So we do quarterly distributions on most of them. There's one property that we did monthly distributions on, but it's passive. So there's nothing that the investors have to do to earn that money, other than investing and trusting us to run that property. So they're getting mailbox money on a quarterly basis. Minimizes the tax burden through depreciation expense. So we do what's called the cost segregation study on every property that we buy. That is an engineering study that basically takes every asset on that property, the trees, the sidewalks, the fitness center, everything at that property, and they put it in buckets, 5, 15-year, and then the 27-year bucket. So assets allow you to depreciate them over time. Well, the Jobs Act that Trump passed way back when, whether you like him or not, that was a very good thing for real estate. It allows us to take bonus depreciation. So in year one, all the assets that are put into the 5 and the 15-year category, we can depreciate them 100% year one. And that flows directly through to investors. So over this period of time, for cash. So over a period of time, we've allowed or helped investors save about $25 million on taxes through this depreciation expense. It is legitimate. It is IRS sanctioned. We do the work to make sure that it is appropriately documented. Scalability, you saw how we've grown, right? So we started with 24 units and now we've hit about 3,500 units. So our passive investors that have invested with us have also grown their portfolios from that point to now a bigger portfolio. So that's something that we like in terms of scalability. And it's open both to accredited and sophisticated investors. So accredited investors, there's a definition, a net worth of $1 million or more, not including the value of your primary home. And then sophisticated investors are people who, like you, have educated themselves on real estate investing and the risks and the benefits. And so they are considered sophisticated. Some opportunities only take accredited, some only take sophisticated. We have always to date taken both accredited and sophisticated investors. Self-directed IRA investments are accepted. We love self-directed IRA investments, and it makes up a nice percentage of our investor pool. And I mentioned I invest in IRAs too. There's not necessarily the tax benefit from that IRA investment because it's already tax-free, but the growth in my IRAs has been phenomenal from investing in real estate. So that's why I like to invest in real estate. So let's talk about what's happening with multifamily and why is multifamily a good asset class. So during COVID, most of you know that the office real estate and the hotel market took a big beating in terms of how people responded to hotels. For example, people weren't traveling. They weren't booking hotels. So those two asset classes didn't do as well. But during COVID, apartments did well, and so did industrial, which is the warehouses that Amazon uses to distribute their products, et cetera. So we found through COVID that this was a very resilient asset class. And why is it? Because there's a huge housing demand. We all know that single-family housing prices have just gone through the roof. So when people can't afford a home or choose not to, there's some people that are renters by choice. They don't want to deal with the yard and the mortgage and all of that. So you can see here where the housing demand has grown. So there is not enough supply to meet the demands of the apartment renter today. And that gap is just getting bigger and bigger, which what happens with supply and demand? If there's not enough supply, but there's more demand, you can really get your rents up higher. And we've seen that at our properties. Okay. So let's talk about the increasing values or the sales of properties in multifamily. So the prices of these multifamily properties have really skyrocketed. 2 points to that, right? If you're buying, it's not always great. If you're selling, it's really, really good. We've benefited from both sides of that, but there is value in multifamily, which is what's driving. I think there was $250 billion on the sidelines during COVID, when COVID started. That money just stayed on the sidelines waiting to invest. Well, after the multifamily industry did very well, all that money flooded into multifamily. And so that's driven some of these prices up, but rents have gone up too. So it's that balance of what's going to drive the value is demand, and then what's going to increase the value of anything you own is rents going up and increasing the value of that property. So, how does Texas perform in all of this? Well, Texas is one of the hottest markets in the country for multifamily. Why? It's the ninth largest economy in the world. Not in the US, but in the world. There's consistent job and population growth. So when we look at a property or a market to buy in, we look at what's happening with jobs and what's happening with population. And where there's growth, guess what? Demand will exceed supply. And so that's a really good place to invest. There's a decline in available housing to meet the population growth. Again, supply, demand, strictly that. So what we found is that we focused on two markets so far, San Antonio and Houston. And why is that? Well, we knew and studied the demographics in those markets. San Antonio has 51% of the households that rent. Probably grown, but at the point we got into this. So 51% of the households are renting. That's a good place to go in. Lots of jobs in the market. Houston, it's closer to 58% of the households that rent. And for us, we wanted to go in and build scale since we manage our properties. So we focused on those two markets for our growth.
Okay, so the portfolio as it stands, as Arlene mentioned, we're in San Antonio and in Houston. So if you look on the map, that's where our properties are. We tend to stay, between 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock, and then some of the Converse area. The one on the bottom right has been one of our best performing properties. We're going to sell it in January. We're going to make a very good return. But you can see our properties that we have here. Go ahead, Arlene. Next one. Okay.
Sleeping on the job.
So this is our Houston portfolio. We were in Houston 3 years ago. We learned that market. And it takes a while to get the brokers used to you. It just takes a while to learn. But as we've grown our portfolio, we've really gained some market knowledge and some intelligence on properties that are there. So this is our current portfolio in Houston. And Houston's pretty easy. We stay really between the 9 o'clock and 12 o'clock portion of Houston. So it's been a great market for us, and we're pretty bullish on both Houston and San Antonio.
A lot of people mistakenly think that Houston is all energy. About 9% of the jobs are energy, right? So in COVID, a lot of the big players were not buying during COVID in Houston. So we took advantage of that, and we were able to buy newer, better quality assets because we weren't competing against the Blackstones and the big guys who come in with lots of capital and overpay for properties. So we took advantage of it and did very well.
So as you can see, let's see, it's Chartwell Court. We just purchased that a year and a half ago. The Hamilton and the Rise. Those are newer assets, as Arlene was talking about. And we're not abandoning the garden style apartment complex. We think there's a lot of value there. There's a lot of demand there. Traditionally, it's always weathered any kind of storm. Especially with COVID, they're larger units that are built in the 80s and the 90s. So as you've seen our portfolio kind of move towards that, but we're closing on some deals that are right smack in the 89s and 90s. And we still love those assets. We don't go after the old stuff anymore, galvanized piping, aluminum wiring, flat roofs. And it took us a while to get there to buy some of these newer assets because the brokers do need to know you, and it is that kind of game. So we feel very fortunate to be in that space, but we feel pretty good about our portfolio being able to go after two assets that just cash flow, that make us money.
Here is, again, when we look at a market, what are we looking at to buy in that market? Well, we're looking at their population growth. Houston, it ranks first in projected population growth for the next 5 years. It will grow hugely. So, and it's already a big market. It's the 7th largest U.S. metro economy. In the U.S., it's the 7th largest economy. We like to look for those details when we look at a market to invest in. And it's the first it's first in terms of the largest U.S. export market. So again, not just petrochemicals, but it's got lots of import-export coming into the city. In fact, I think when all those barges were parked outside of LA and in California, Houston sent a message, we can take you, come to Houston, we'll unload your barges. Job and income growth. Houston projected #2 in jobs and income growth. So as jobs grow, people come into the market and they're looking for a place to live. And then there are 22 Fortune 500 companies that call Houston home. So this is the data we look at. Now we zoom in from just the macro of Houston and we zoom into what's called the submarket, which is a 3 to 5 mile area around the properties we buy. And we do an even more in-depth study to understand who is there, what kinds of income do they make, and can they afford the rents that we're projecting to charge once we improve these properties. So let's look at a submarket analysis example. So we look at market rent growth year over year. We look at the market rent per unit. We look at the effective rent, which is you take out vacancy, you take everything else. What's the true cash you're bringing to the bank? And then we look at the Houston market. We compare the overall market to a specific submarket to see how does this submarket rank within the overall Houston metro area. And we like to do that to make sure we understand where we're investing is going to be a good area for the property. In addition, we do things like crime studies. That's where we start. We don't even underwrite or put numbers to a computer until we know that crime is not a big factor in that market, because guess what? Our team works on those properties. If I'm not comfortable going to that property, then I wouldn't want anybody on our team to go there either. So, and you're not going to get a good demographic, right? You're not going to get the best renter in an area that's got high crime, and you're not going to be able to charge good rent. So we look at all of that data. And then we look at overall vacancy. Vacancy is how many units are not occupied at a particular time. So vacancy has declined. You can see, where it's been. It was 2009 at 12.1. It grew in 2020 to 11.9. And now it's down to 9.3. That's across all the properties in this big, huge Houston market. So we've seen our personal numbers grow even better than that. So currently, our portfolio is 96% occupied. Most of our properties are a little over that. That's just the average. So if you think about that, there's only 3% vacancy. So what's happened with our rents? They've really grown. Our net operating income, which is our income less our expenses, which is how our properties are valued, we have had it range from, in just 2021, they grew from 8% to the highest in our properties was 48% growth in their income. So that's pretty phenomenal for us. And here's when we go in and look at submarkets, those are all the different submarkets in the Houston metro. We are invested primarily in Northwest Houston, which is the #1 submarket in the city. So this is the data we're combing through and looking at before we buy a property.
Okay, so let's change gears for a little bit and let's talk about how we, or the process, if you would, of kind of the anatomy of how properties go through the cycle of buying and then, due diligence and disposition and operations and disposition. So what you're looking at here is the entire REAP team. And what I want you guys to take away from this is we manage the entire process, When Arlene's team goes out and tours a property, as she mentioned, she gets a lot of data. Our property management team is already engaged and knows what they're doing. They really get engaged in the step #1 under when the LOI gets accepted. When the LOI gets accepted, that's when they even become more engaged with our property. And we soon move from the contract to step 2, which is the due diligence. And that is when both teams, our acquisition team and our property management team, are really involved, because the business plan is so important. That's what really drives all the rents. That's what drives the customer experience on the property. And the more we can convey as owners or as acquisition people to our management company of what the vision of the property is, the more they get involved. And they get really excited, the teams do, when they know we're going to come in and do, $1 million renovation, and we're going to add some amenities. We're going to fix all the problems on the property. We're going to fix the parking lot. We're going to do the clubhouse, and we're going to add units, refresh or unit upgrade. So by the time step 2 comes in, they are completely engaged with the business plan and what we're trying to do. And that makes it so much easier on step 3 when they take over. If you share any LinkedIn, Reap Equity LinkedIn, you're going to know that when we take over in day 1, 50 items are already done. Our teams have t-shirts, or not t-shirts. They have shirts, they have sweaters, they have cardigans. Our maintenance guys have badges. Fortunately, we've got other sites that we can onboard them on. They're already trained. So our carpets are down, which says, REIT management or whatever the property name is. We're totally taking over that property. And there's something to be said about when we take over a property, we want to spend all of our CapEx money, the $1 million, for example, I just told you. If we could spend it in the next weekend, we would, because that's just basically improves the property. So that really makes step 3 just the ongoing process. You hit your numbers, we get our cash back. And they maximize the investor return on step 4 through the disposition when we decide to sell it. And they're also engaged too, because CapEx gets done 2 or 3 years later. They sell the property. We tell them, here's the plan. Here's what we're going to do. We go and refresh the property. We get the property tours. We let our staff know day 1 when we're going to sell the property, because it's just fair to them. And it just makes for very, very good culture. So I'm really proud of what we've built and what the teams are currently accomplishing each day at REIT.
Well, and as Steve said, it is not just about the money part, although that's probably one of the key things that we offer investors. But it's that feel good. It's making that community better, giving those residents the best place to live and creating a better community for them to live in. That's a key part of this, because if we do that well, they stay with us. That's how we get to 97% occupancy. And every time they don't move, we're not spending money having to redo a unit. So it's a very good process all the way around.
Okay, so just a quick case study. This is Chartwell. We purchased it in December of 2020. It's a garden style. What we like about this asset is every single unit has an attached garage. So it just really makes it a differentiator in the market. So one of the things that we do on our management side is we are just real expense hawks. We don't cut back on filters or preventative maintenance, but we really watch what we're buying, because we've grown a lot. We've had a lot of buying power, and our teams don't have any shortages of appliances or any parts. And there's a little secret sauce to that, which I won't share, but we really get the attention of our suppliers and vendors, and we were able to get supplies. So this slide basically says when we took over Chartwell Court, the expenses were $4,092 a door. And these are controllable expenses, which means excluding property management fees, insurance, and real estate taxes. We can't control those. We control everything else. So afterwards, now there's a 14% reduction. So it's about $3,500 a door that we've run our expenses on. So if you divide that into a 6 cap, it's about $2 million in value creation.
If you've been watching real estate, cap rates are not that high. Cap rates are even lower. So the value creation has been even better than $2 million.
Okay, was this mine too? Okay, so the renovated units, just to let you know, they're averaging $180, 14% over prior rents. And we estimated $100 rent bumps on these renovations. So we're doing pretty good with this property. And as I think Arlene had touched on, portfolio-wide, our NOI has gone up. But on this particular one, we exceeded pro forma by 8% on the net operating income.
So part of that is putting the money to work in the right places. The excitement is the greatest the day we take over and the months right after. Our team is excited. The residents are excited because we let them know what's coming. What are we going to do to the property? So you can see here before the leasing office, that was a kitchen. You can see on the middle of that far left picture, nobody used it. So we went in and we.
Yeah, I think I'm sorry, honey, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay.
I think the pictures are all off. This was the old one here.
Right.
We'll spend a lot of time on this. This is the old one here. This is the new one here that we did with us. And as Arlene mentioned, this was the you can see this was it had a kitchen that nobody ever used. We turned this into a nice computer center. And I'm not for sure where the before picture for that one is, but anyway, you get the drift of what we're doing with the properties. And this was our pergola area. We did put a nice barbecue grill there, and this was a fire pit. Well, this was a planter and sitting in the middle of nowhere, and it was not used at all. Now you go out there and there's a propane kit and seating area. It's actually a real nice amenity, so it looks real nice.
And residents will pay you more for these amenities, right? That's part of the secret of raising the rents, is giving them more to enjoy at the property. So what did we project on part report when we first underwrote it with our investors? This is what we show our investors. This is the numbers that we're projecting to hit. And remember, this is based on $100. So we've already exceeded it by hitting $180 rent increases. So starting out again with a $100,000 investment, it's projected to return $190,805 by the time it's said and done. 18% average annual return, an IRR of 17%, and an average cash on cash return of 11.9%. So it's performed very, very well. And this was an asset that we had been trying to buy for a year before we got it. And when the folks got scared in COVID, we came in and we bought it.
Okay, the other case study we'll go through is the Hamilton downtown. We just closed that in December of 2021. Thank you. So it's our first wrap. It's downtown Houston. It's absolutely beautiful. And the rents were $330 below institutional quality asset. And we're just real happy. Go ahead. So you can see some of the pictures. These are all pictures currently. There's really not a heavy lift on this particular asset. There's some amenities that we're going to do. It really is a management play for us. But you can see the property, the pictures speak for themselves. They're absolutely gorgeous.
And the rents we put in our underwriting were the rents they were getting in 2019. So the property has already proven they can get those rents. We're just going to manage the property better to get those rents up and even higher than that. So this is what the interiors look like today. You can see they're beautiful. They already have the granite. They already have the stainless steel. They have the wood look flooring. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and add some extra features to the units themselves. And you can see here the amenities. I mean, the clubhouse is beautiful, all the wood, the gathering areas, the fitness center. So we didn't have to spend a lot of money in it. We just need to run it better, which is what we know how to do. So this is what we're going to do on the exterior. Total rehab budget for the property is $500,000, which the lender lent us. So we will put in upgraded grilling areas on each floor. Every floor has a grilling area in this section here. You can see it right there. So we're going to add TVs to those. How expensive is a TV these days? Not much, but the community can gather in those spaces with family, et cetera. Executive mini office spaces. We're going to update the pool furniture. We're going to add an electric vehicle charging station. That's something that has become very, very popular. Plus, you can charge for it. So it can be a money generator, too. And then improve the dog park. So as Jacob said, the current rent is $1,548. The rent comps are at $300 to $330 more. So we know we can get the rents because other people are charging those rents that look and feel just like our property. On the interior for these units, again, not a lot to add, but we're going to add wine refrigerators. Simple. There's a place to put it. We figured that out when we were doing the due diligence. Slide it in, hook it up, we're ready to go. No touch kitchen faucets and bathroom faucets. You walk up, you run your hand underneath it, the water starts, you run your hand again and it stops. Maybe $20 more for that faucet than what we're paying already, but it's a wow factor that people will remember when they tour the property. And then we're going to introduce amenity fee and increase the RUBS, which is the charge we have for the water and sewer that they are already allocated today. But they're below market on these things, and we figured out when we were doing our due diligence. So these are the projected returns based on $100,000 and $200,000. This was a little different offering. The $100,000 has a different split. It's 80-20, meaning the investors get 80%, the sponsor and sponsor teams 20. For a higher investment, we found that investors really wanted to earn a little more by investing a little more. So in this case, they're at an 85-15 split. If they invest more money, they get a little bigger piece of that pie. So you can see where the returns are. For the 100,000, it's a 97% or a 1.97x total return. For the Class B, it's a 2.06 return. So very good numbers here. And again, we were very conservative in our rent increases, just getting the rents back to the market where they were before. So we feel really, really good about these numbers. Here's another case study. This is the two properties that we bought as a portfolio that I mentioned. We increased the value of these $12 million. And we bring this up because it's not magic. It's our team delivering. It's our team performing and doing the work to make residents happy before we can get a higher rent. And you can see that the value of those properties went up $12 million. They got back 45% of their money. They still own it at the same percentage when they invested day one. And that money that was returned to them was tax-free because the IRS considers it a return of investment. So we will look at another refinance, return more money back to them, and this thing is cash flowing big time. So investors really like that. All right.
Questions?
Joyce, I'm assuming you raise funds for individual projects.
That is correct.
Have you looked at?
Sure.
Yeah, I was asking if they raise.
Oh, microphone. Hello.
They raise funds for individual projects, but it's such an impressive company. Have you looked at raising equity to be part of the REAP family?
Almost like a fund? you mean?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. We have not. As we've grown, we've seen our investors become more sophisticated, right? Because that's typically a more sophisticated investment. We have found some investors want to see the deal before they invest. Lately, we have seen our equity become a little more patient, a little more, let's stay in the deal, let's cash flow it. And we've seen a lot of them, like you ask for, not a lot of them, some of them ask for a fund. It's something we would absolutely entertain. In fact, would anybody be interested in it if we did a fund? I'm just curious. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Those are good numbers. Yes, thank you. We have explored it. We've talked to an attorney about setting up a fund. And then we got busy buying 8 properties last year. So it's out in the horizon. We just need to make sure we completely put it together correctly before we approach it.
Yes, Bob.
Thank you. A couple of questions. With the COVID loss, where renters were not required to pay rent, I know there were some programs where they had government assistance in paying rent, but what did you experience with regard to, quote, COVID rent loss?
Sure, we experienced about a 4% overall loss. What time is all said and done?
Translate that to, what does that mean to us?
Okay, if we collect $100,000 on a property, we collect typically $99,000. And in COVID, we were collecting probably 96,000.
Okay.
I mean, I know some other industries, absolutely, they'd love to have that. There is a lawsuit by the National Apartment Association that's, that started, but we'll see if that money ever gets returned.
The reason that we minimized it to the 4% was because our team was proactive. As soon as we knew that assistance was out there, they completed the applications for the renters. They delivered them to their door and said, here's where you need to sign, because that was the biggest stumbling block with renters not knowing what to fill out, how to fill it out. So we did it for them. And that allowed us to minimize any kind of a loss that we might have experienced. That was our portfolio average. Each property was a little different. And What we know about the industry data about COVID is that your C properties tended to be the ones that experienced a little higher loss. Your B assets, not so much, and your A assets, not so much. Because your A assets, most of those folks could work from home. So there wasn't the experience that some of the C-class workforce housing, restaurant workers and folks that we definitely need in our industry and in our communities. That's where the biggest hit came to the communities.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had was, you talked about the property value as pretty much a factor of the NOI going up. What about the cost of the building? I mean, it costs more for building materials and everything every year. So does that contribute to the overall sale price as well as the NOI?
When you a replacement cost, of course. So when people are looking to buy an asset, right, they'll look at what is the cost basis, what is the replacement cost for that building, and what we know is that in today's market to build these assets, it would cost you a lot more than those properties are valued at today. But that's part of what's driving the increase in the sales prices of these assets. Was that your question, Bob?
I was just wondering how much is attributable to NOI versus how much is attributable to replacement cost?
It's a little of both. I mean, ultimately it's NOI. Somebody is buying the income stream, period. They are buying the income stream of that asset. Now, the market will help, right? Because if the market is saying, replacement cost is this, you can buy the asset for this price. And I will tell you that replacement cost and those prices are very different by market. Where we were buying these assets, we bought Chartwell Court at $106,000 a door. A property exactly like that property just sold for $145,000 a door a year later. Because there is demand and these rents have grown. So the income has grown that supports the value of those properties.
Any other questions?
Have you always been internal property management, or is something you segued into? Because
The short story is, once we got to like 400 units, we did go third party because we didn't have enough scale to really hire someone to run the business. So we went third party to about 1,000 units, and then we brought it back in and then hired accounting and hired someone who could run it and hired HR. So that's the short answer. Yes, yes, sir.
I was going to say that I certainly prefer faucets that I have to turn on by hand. I mean, am I that much of a minority or not?
No, I don't know the answer to that. I know it's been very well received on our properties, and it's just the kitchen. So
I will say from my perspective, I may be a millennial, but I definitely liked all those extra features you had in that last case study. I would definitely move into that apartment complex.
And we've seen that too. Yes.
Okay, y'all. Any other questions? Please raise your hand. I'll hand you the mic. If not, okay, one. It's for the online audience.
So my question is, especially like on your monthly, well, even on the other ones that you give monthly income back to, are you all pretty timely on that? And in regards to the accounting part of it, do y'all find that it's hard to get someone that's really good and qualified and stick with your agency?
as far as the distributions, now, yeah, our team sends them out. For example, if you have a distribution coming out in January, it goes to you before the end of the month in February. So with full financial reporting, we do financial reporting every single month. We don't do it quarterly. We like monthly reports, and it comes with a full set of financial reports for you.
How is it different? I don't know if you just invest in Houston, but I at least from what I hear, Houston is very unregulated with regard to zoning compared to, say Austin, which is overregulated and also vastly overpriced. What's your experience with that?
Well, we know that Houston doesn't zone, and so that's part of our due diligence is to really comb that area. We visit the area, 5-10 miles around that area to see what's there, what does it look like. We're not going to buy a property that's next door to a, commercial business because you see that in Houston. We're very picky about what we buy, and we're very picky about the due diligence to understand what's in and around that property because ultimately it's about will somebody want to live here.
Taking over, but I'm still wondering, and maybe maybe it's happening more gradually. And do you think we're going to see a exodus from the large metropolitan areas? Because if you can live in or have a job in Houston, but say live in Huntsville or live in Brenham, then why live in Houston?
Well, part of that is do you think we're going to come back to the offices? And I think some of them won't. And all COVID did was say you shouldn't have been here to begin with. What it also did was you need to come back in the office because we can't operate, we can't grow, we can't collaborate. And the fact that more people are moving to Texas than ever before, and as long as the policies of these other states are super business unfriendly and unfriendly to families, they're going to keep coming here. So I see Houston continuing to grow. They keep getting corporate, headquarters relocating. They got 2 gigantic airports. Look at Austin. You guys built the airport in the middle of nowhere. Now it's not in the middle of nowhere. And same thing with DFW 30 years ago. And you guys have just landed. Who'd y'all land? Oracle? No, who'd y'all land recently?
Tesla.
Tesla and Samsung.
has.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if anyone's seen the big Tesla
Oh yeah.
warehouse out there, but it's
Yeah. So I think people are going to continue to come here, and I see us on a 10-year run, Texas.
as a millennial. Oh, as a millennial, I'm not moving outside of Austin.
And what we track is what percentage of those millennials are moving to Austin, San Antonio, Houston. And believe it or not, San Antonio has one of the biggest millennial growths in Texas. And why is that? Because they go for live, work, play environments. They want the culture. They want to be near the restaurants, near the all the activities. That's what millennials are looking for. So Texas is awesome. And that Texas triangle between Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and up is really where the hotbed is.
Okay, we have one more.
Speak like millennials in work, play, live. Mixed use facilities, you got retail here, multifamily on top. Is that something you're looking at? I don't know if it's in the future or what's your thought there?
It could be in the future for us. I think right now, as young as we are, we're just going to continue to scale and double down on what we know, which is why we're focused on Houston and Dallas. And it's very possible we could have 40 properties in Houston. Yeah. But look, so we're going to continue to take advantage of that. I think when it's time for us to move into other sectors, we capitalize it very well, right? We hire the right people, and we purposely say we're going to do a mixed use. So I think development for us is probably before that, but good question.
We really like that build to rent space. Also, it behaves very similar to what we do today. We know how to run multifamily. But what we're finding is that the boomers, the baby boomers, again, another big group demographic-wise, are downsizing. And we saw a complex in Houston. The majority of the people renting were over 55. And so we're looking at that, and we're looking at the millennials that, again, don't want to buy a house, but they start having families, or they want to move into a different environment than an apartment complex. Well, that is a community where the pool is taken care of, the lawn's taken care of, everything's taken care of, and pay rent. So these are the demographic data that we watch and monitor to look at what do we go into next.
Okay, any other questions? You have one? Okay.
I was just wondering if y'all allow y'all's passive investors to sell their shares or to pull their money out of the investment before y'all's end date or the end of the hold.
Yeah, that's a question that does get asked, and unfortunately, it's not liquid, and it stays in the investment.
Okay.
I'll get to you.
I've got a business question. Wanting to know at this point in your scale, what would be the biggest challenge right now that then now we've vertically integrated with property management? What's the next problem we have to solve is one question. Then I guess the second would be right now, the way you guys have it set up, who would be the visionary and who would be the integrator that's, makes it happen right now?
Yeah. So the question of what's next, I don't care what kind of business that you're in. It's always about the people. You guys, some of you guys in here know it's always about the people. It's always about the culture. You bring that in very strongly, and these guys and gals will build your company. The second one, as you grow, you got to scale the business right. You got to put in systems and processes. You got to know when to move to a new HR system or new accounting system or new property management system. You just got to figure that out, and that just comes with getting around the right groups to help you, bring in the right consultants, or bring in the right business people who can help you grow your business. And we've done that. So.
And to answer your question, he's more the big picture guy and I'm more the implementer. But, and when you work together, we're husband and wife team, right? When you first start working with any partner, you have to learn how to work with them, right? And we've done that. We've been at this now 10 years, but we know our lanes, right? I'm in acquisitions because I have a lending background and a banking background, and I'm a numbers person. And Jacob helps to oversee our president, not very much because she does a good job on the operations side of the business, but it keeps us focused, but he is the visionary. And I like to implement, so it works.
Did you? Have you raised your hand?
Back to that question about exit. Since you said that you're contemplating or you will look into establishing funds, is that going to be the same policy? The funds are funds easier to exit from versus since it's more than one property?
Well, I was talking to somebody earlier today, and I believe you could set up a fund where you can trade it like a mutual fund. I'm not for sure how to do that. I think you have to get to a certain number of scale to have that certain amount of interest. It's probably very expensive to set up a fund. But our goal would be to set it up like that, so you could enter and exit, maybe at certain times too. But I know that's possible. For us.
Like REITs. Like REITs.
Like REITs, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed.
Okay. Bob, you had a question?
Since we seem to be drilling down on whether you can get in, get out at your own leisure, for your existing projects that you have now, can a person sell their share of the asset rather than exit? You'd still have the money in the investment, but someone else would own it. Was that possible?
No, it's very illiquid.
Okay.
All right, y'all. Any more questions? We're kind of getting towards the end of the night. So speak once, speak twice. I mean, no, I'm here for y'all. We'll go through any questions y'all have, but it is getting a little late. Okay, y'all. If no more questions, then can we give a round of applause for the Garzas? Thank y'all for joining us. I know y'all come from San Antonio, so thank you for making the drive. Just quick reminders, we do have this social every second Tuesday of the month here in Austin. If you can never make it in person, it is also always online. And yeah, if y'all have any questions about how to use your self-directed IRA to do any of this type of investing, if you have any questions about any of the upcoming events that we have here, besides the social, we do have the big expo coming up this year. We're bringing it back. We had one in 2018 and 2019, but obviously with COVID, we had to stop. Which I like to make a comment that if COVID did not happen, this would be our 5th annual expo, but unfortunately with COVID, this is our third annual, so we skipped out a little bit. But if y'all have any questions about any events that we have coming up, feel free to find myself, Sarah, or Steve, Maurice. We are having an expo. Yes, it is going to be September 23rd through 25th. It's going to be in Houston. So it's going to be a Friday through a Sunday. It's going to be late into September, 23rd through the 25th. For those of y'all here in the office, there should be a flyer there for the expo. For those of y'all online, feel free to visit questtrust.com, go to special events, and you'll find the information there. Maurice, what's going on? We will have that conversation off the camera. There are opportunities. We'll talk about it. But for everyone, please, thank you for joining us tonight. For everyone online, thank you for joining. Y'all have a good night. We will see you next month. Thank you.